All right, sixth grade historians, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into this explainer all about the ancient African empire of Aksum. History isn't just about memorizing dusty names and old dates. It's actually this giant puzzle, a massive mystery just waiting to be solved. And Aksum? Well, it's honestly one of the greatest mysteries out there. We're talking about a fabulously wealthy, unbelievably powerful ancient African civilization that left behind some monumental clues. And guess what? It's our job to piece them all together. Okay, let's take a quick look at our explorer's map for today. 1. Welcome to ancient Aksum. 2. Clues on the coins. 3. Monuments and vast wealth. 4. King Azana's big change. And 5. The fall of Aksum. Welcome to ancient Aksum. Let's set the geographical stage. So, if you spin a modern globe, you'd point your finger right at the Horn of Africa, specifically modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea. And this empire wasn't just a flash in the pan. I mean, it thrived for well over 1,000 years. It all kicked off around 400 BCE. To put that into perspective, that is right around the time the ancient Greeks were building their famous temples. Then, right in the middle, around 340 CE, we hit a massive turning point, King Azana's conversion to Christianity. And finally, by 700 CE, we see the decline of the empire. Make sure you keep that middle date in mind, because it's going to change absolutely everything later on. So what made Aksum so powerful for so long? Basically, location, location, location. They were literally the crossroads of the world. Sitting right there along the Red Sea, they were a massively wealthy trading powerhouse. I want you to imagine merchants traveling for months from the Roman Empire, packing ships full of glass and olive oil. Then traders from India bringing silk and cotton. And they're all converging in these bustling Aksumite ports to do business. Aksum controlled the ultimate ancient highway, acting as this crucial middleman connecting the deep interior of Africa to the Mediterranean Sea and all the way across the ocean to Asia. Moving right along to section 2, clues on the coins. Now, I've got a question for you all. How do we actually know so much about these ancient kings? Think about it for a second. We don't have a time machine. We don't have video recordings or photographs. So how do historians today figure out what languages they spoke, what they valued, or who they even traded with? Well, the answer is literally right in their pockets. The crucial point here is that these Aksumite coins are basically ancient text messages. They're vital historical evidence. Just by looking at the inscriptions stamped on these pieces of currency, we know for a fact that the Aksumites were highly literate. They were completely fluent in their local Ethiopic language, Ge'ez, and also Greek. And Greek was essentially the international business language of the ancient world, kind of like how English is used globally today. These incredible little pieces of metal tell us exactly who their rulers were and how they went about their daily lives. And they had a genuinely brilliant dual currency business strategy. On one hand, rulers like King Indubis struck these gorgeous gold coins specifically for international exports. They used Greek inscriptions and precise Roman weight standards to appeal directly to foreign merchants. They knew exactly how to make doing business super easy for their wealthiest partners overseas. But then, on the other hand, for everyday local trade within the empire, they minted silver and copper coins with local Ge'ez inscriptions. So they brilliantly catered to the international billionaires, so to speak, while still perfectly serving their own people down at the local market. It's just so smart. Which brings us to section 3, monuments and vast wealth. Because they were so incredibly strategic with their trade routes and currency, Aksum accumulated unimaginable riches. Let's look at their ultimate treasure list. Their wealth didn't just come from pure gold, though, they definitely had plenty of that. They completely controlled the flow of highly sought-after luxury goods, things like precious ivory and exotic spices that people all over the ancient world were absolutely desperate for. But honestly, the most surprising treasure? Teff. It's a local grain, basically the ancient version of a modern superfood. It's actually still used today to make delicious Ethiopian injera bread. The Aksumites were so proud of this vital, life-sustaining local wheat that they stamped images of teff stalks right onto their money, right alongside the portraits of their mighty kings. And what do you do when your empire is that rich? Well, you build massive monuments to prove it. These towering stone obelisks are called stelae. They served as royal graves for their leaders, and they are breathtaking symbols of Aksum's wealth and prestige. The sheer power it took to carve these out of solid stone, drag them across the land without any modern machinery, and stand them perfectly upright, it's simply staggering. Some of these weighed hundreds of tons. That is like stacking a bunch of modern commercial airplanes on top of each other. And incredibly, some of these giant stone monuments are still standing today, piercing the sky as the ultimate display of ancient architectural brilliance. Now, let's jump to section 4, King Ezana's big change. Remember that middle date on our timeline? Well, here is where a massive cultural shift completely transformed the empire and literally changed the face of their money. Now, what's really interesting here is the visual evidence left behind. Early coins from King Endubis feature a crescent and a disc, and those represented the old South Arabian religions that Aksum followed at the time. But look at the later coins of King Ezana and King Joel. You suddenly see a Christian cross replacing the old symbols. During the 4th century, a traveler named Frumentius converted King Ezana. This sparked a total religious and political shift. And honestly, this wasn't just a spiritual choice. It was a brilliant political move that cleverly aligned Aksum's identity with its biggest superpower trading partners, Rome and later Byzantium. And it wasn't just the symbols changing, it was the words too. From the 4th century onwards, as they issued more and more copper coins for everyday people, they started stamping them with beautiful, openly Christian inscriptions. Imagine going to the market to buy grain and holding a coin that says, "Joy and peace to the people," or "He conquers through Christ." It really shows just how public and deeply central their new faith became to the entire kingdom. The money was literally spreading the message. But, they were also incredibly practical. Pure gold is expensive. So, as the empire grew and they started replacing those expensive gold coins with cheaper copper ones, Aksumite craftsmen invented this brilliant ancient life hack called gilding. Here's how it worked. First, they'd take a regular, cheap copper coin. Then they would carefully glue incredibly thin, delicate layers of real gold leaf just onto the crowns and specific symbols on the copper. It was basically ancient bling on a budget. This clever technique completely enhanced the appearance, making the cheaper coins look incredibly valuable to merchants, all without draining the empire's actual gold reserves. Sadly, all empires have an end. Section 5. The Fall of Aksum. Let's see how this builds to the final chapter of our mystery, to discover why this wealthy superpower eventually collapsed. You see, it wasn't just one single dramatic event that brought the empire down by the 7th century. It was more like a perfect storm of severe pressures. Politically, the rapid rise of Islamic power in the surrounding region shifted control of the Red Sea. Then, economically, those vital international trade routes that brought them all that wealth, they began to change course, completely bypassing Aksum. And on top of all that, environmentally, there was devastating deforestation and soil erosion. They had cut down way too many trees to fuel their fires and clear land for farming, and the topsoil literally just washed away. The land simply couldn't support a booming empire anymore. But hey, don't be sad, because even though the political empire faded, its incredible cultural and religious legacy is still an enduring legacy today. The magnificent ruins of Aksum remain as a highly protected UNESCO World Heritage Site. Those giant steles still stand tall in modern-day Ethiopia, perfectly preserved for historians, archaeologists, and students like you to study forever. So the ancient kingdom still has a ton to teach us about engineering, trade, and human resilience. And this brilliantly illustrates how everyday objects hold deep historical secrets. I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We just used Aksumite coins to uncover the languages, trade, and religion of an empire that existed well over 1,000 years ago. So, if future historians dug up the coins in your pocket, or maybe the digital currency records we use today, what would they learn about us? What symbols, words, and values do you think they'd find? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions and keep exploring history.